Alright, here we are in the morning, the fourth day of the pirate ship build. We want to make sure that we're going to sand all of our rails, all the spots that we're going to have little pirate's hands. As you can see, we've already done some rounding of these corners here. You want to hit the tops of the rails all the way around, and also places like the 6x6 mast where you're going to have little hands always on that. That'll be a pretty important thing, so make sure you get your little hand sander out and go to it. Okay, we're now ready to start our siding. The first piece that we want to fit on our siding is going to be a piece that goes over this base band here. What you'll first do is just cut a piece that is roughly the right length. Give it a couple inches on each side. We're going to go 6 foot on this piece. You're going to use your 1x6s. Alright, we've got our 6 foot piece here. The first cut we want to make is on this left side. We're going to put a 30-degree angle on our board. We cut that with our miter saw and bring it back. Before we install the board with our galvanized finished nails, we're going to use some liquid nails glue. Make good sure it never comes off of there. You'll notice that we didn't cut the length on the right side yet. We use the sawzall for that. And snip it right off. Alright, for this step we're going to use our sawzall. We're going to use the front of our base here as a guide to cut this 1x6 off flush. We've got our opening here on the front, and this is where we're going to start. So bring this out about a 1/2 inch. You can see. And go ahead and apply our glue. Over here you'll notice that we got a piece that was plenty long. This is a 16-inch piece. We're going to end up cutting it here later on, but we want to let that hang over so that we make sure we've always got enough to make our cut and to make our seam later on. So they can do it. Complete taping them. You'll have some cases where you're going to have a gap where your board is bowed a little bit and shooting up on you. You want to try to take those gaps out. What I'm going to use is a clamp here. Just tighten it down. One thing to also watch when you're nailing on this very last 4x4 here, we're going to be taking the sawzall flush with this 4x4. So you want to keep your nails back behind the plane of that 4x4 so that when you cut through, you don't end up cutting your nails off. Alright, we're going to remember to stop on board number 6 here, because board number 7 is actually going to go all the way across, and that's where we're going to cut our arch in the opening here. We'll put one last one up. We'll measure our total length. Pretty good. Huh? Yeah, anywhere. Yeah, that's what we like to call DO in the pirate ship building business. Okay, glue. The last piece on the slanted portion of the hull here, we've had to rip down a piece of our siding. The way that we found our measurement on our rip, measure from the top of our last piece to the bottom corner of the bottom plate. You see we've got 4.5 inches there. And that stayed true all the way down. We set our table saw on 4.5 inches. And we've got a 17-degree rip on this. That's going to help our next piece sit square and not have a gap. Funky.
Funky, funky.
Alright, you can see that we've got 4.5 here, and that's to our short point of our 17-degree rip. So you've got to make sure and orient the board right on your table saw, so that you end up with 4.5 to the short. And that's going to make it so that 4.5 point sits right here in the corner, and you've got it coming out square for your next board to sit down flush on. But it should be fun to do that to them. You owe me $200 an hour for a consultation fee. Now that we've got our siding pieces all installed on the slant, we're going to go ahead and cut these off, again flush with the 4x4 using our Sawzall. Alright, I've set my square flush with the corner of my top plate here. I'm just going to draw a straight line. Outside of this bottom cut, the very first piece that we installed, draw a line, connect the two. That's going to be our cut line. Now we've got our line drawn, we're going to take our Sawzall, and what I'm going to do is just cut it straight down from the top to the bottom. I'm going to keep it steady and keep it as straight as I can. Yeah, that's good. Done like a true pirate. What they were doing. I've got our next board here. We've gone ahead and cut the 30-degree angle on it as well. We're going to put it right on that point. And then we'll eventually put another piece in there. Here you can see back Anything, not to pull things anymore, or not going to go correct anymore. For our last piece, we're going to rip a board to fit. We've got 2.5 inches all the way across. Take an 8-foot board and rip it down to 2.5. And we're going to also put our 30-degree angle on the left side. Let the right side hang over, and we'll cut that with the sawzall as well. One last thing to do on this opening here is to cut out an arch. I found the center of this opening, which in this case is 9.5. They mark it 9.5. The square it up. Now I don't want to cut too close to the top of this, or it'll be too weak. I've come down about 1 inch from the top and made a mark here. And then I've just sort of sketched out one side of this arch. I'm going to cut this with a jigsaw, take it and flip it over, and use it as a pattern for the other side so that our arch is consistent all the way across. Alright, we're working on the first piece on the front side here. What we're going to do is pull the measurement from our other siding board. We've got our angle cut. We get a length on this. We've got 8 foot exactly. We've cut our board 8 foot to the short point of our 45. This board is going to wrap around the entire base of the ship. So we're going to have a 45 miter in this outside corner. We've got our glue and we're going to nail it on. Our next step is to find our angle where these two pieces of siding will meet. It's a little tricky, but let me show you how we do it. Just get a rough idea what my miter and my bevel are going to be. Get one by doing this, and then the back end. I'm going to take this to the saw, cut it, bring it back over. I'm going to try to show you how we're going to set the board on the saw to make this cut. Alright, here's the board that we marked over on the ship. We got this front mark here and the one on top. These are the two angles. It's a little tricky to get on our saw. To do this, we're going to actually flip it over. We're going to transfer the mark across the bottom and to the back. Lay it on our saw. And we're going to turn the miter until we're close. Again, this is going to be sort of a trial and error. We're going to cut it once, we're going to bring it to the ship, we're going to check it. We've made the first cut on our siding board here. We're going to go ahead and set it where it needs to go and check our cut. You can see we've got a little gap on the bottom still. So we're going to draw a little line to correct that on the saw. And also on the back we've got a little gap. Take it back to our saw and we'll try it again. You can fix it too if you want to later. Or I know where she. I know where she's hair down, but I don't know where. Exactly. I know. It's that's right. thing. Yeah. It might get a little fine. You don't want to put it down. I call this a circle board. It pretty much comes full circle. Okay, break it down. Wait. Come on. Pull it out. Ready. May 26th. Cousin Bill. Calico. Alright, we've got the same situation here where we've got to rip our siding board. We've got 4 1/8 all the way across. We've taken one of our boards and cut the angle on the right that we were using, and then we've gone with the 17-degree rip on our table saw. You can see how the short point of your 17-degree is basically flush with the bottom of this bottom plate. That's where you want it. Alright, when you get ready to cut this back corner, you're going to be on a 45-degree angle. It's real important that you remember this one thing. You've already cut your siding boards at a 45-degree on your miter saw. This is the point where you're going to be cutting by hand. You're going to be cutting with your sawzall. What I've done here is I've set just to the inside of 45 degrees. You can eyeball it and you can see where 45 degrees sits. And just to the inside. If you go to the outside of 45, you're going to end up having a hard time making your joints with your saw later on. So on this back, you've got to make sure you're just to the inside of 45 degrees when you're cutting. I've drawn a straight line from the bottom corner to the top corner, and I'm following that line all the way down and try to be consistent. Alright, here we are ready to put the siding on the back here. First thing we want to do, since we have an opening here, we're going to grab a piece that's at least long to hang over this opening, this rough door opening. The way we want to find this angle here, draw a parallel line from the top corner to the bottom that matches this line here on the front side of the siding. So instead of an eyeball, you can draw that line as parallel as you can, and then for the second cut, you want to match this miter here. So you're going to draw a line back. You want this line to be parallel with this. You want this line to be parallel here. You're going to take that to your saw. You're going to cut a miter and a bevel on your miter saw. You're going to bring it back, check it, and make some adjustments. We've got our two sides going here. What we've done is stop when we've got to the second to last full piece. We want to be able to make our arch and our siding. One thing you've got to do is take a measurement from the top of the last piece to the bottom of this top plate here, and make sure it's consistent all the way across. Mine was about an 1/8 inch off, so I marked the line at 8 inches, a line at 8 inches, and we chalked the line across, and then we cut what needed to be cut here. So that when we put our siding piece on, it'll go all the way across and there won't be any gaps. Alright, I'm going to show you how to attach our 1.5 inch manila rope onto the gangplank. We're going to take our 3-inch screws and use the washers that are provided in your hardware kit. That sounds good, doesn't it? I've gone ahead and taped the end with some duct tape. We're going to drive the screw right through it. We put our washer on a screw, and that's going to help grip the rope better to hold it in. Just screw it right to your rail. Get it good and tight there. You want to go ahead and do several. Alright, we're going to set the rope on our middle post here. One thing to remember with this kind of rope is that when it gets wet and when it gets cold outside, it'll start to shrink up a little bit. So if you have it pulled too tight to begin with, it'll tighten even more and it could pull out. So you do want to give it a little bit of slack when it's installed. Give it some slack and use your clamp. Stick a couple screws in it. Use it to put behind all this.